Hey, this is Scott, and today we're going to be talking about this super bright, super feature-packed 7-inch camera monitor from OSEE. So we'll start off with some basic specs about this monitor, and then I'll get into the things that I liked, the reasons that I think this is one of the best value monitors on the market. I'll talk about a couple of small complaints, and then I will get in depth to the menus and all of the different features that this has to offer. So this is a 7-inch monitor that's just over 1080p, leaving a little bit of extra room for information on screen without covering up your image. It's 1100 nits, which means that it's super bright and easy to view even outdoors, and it's built really well. It's all metal except for the battery plates. It does come with dual battery plates, which can use both Sony L series batteries or Canon LPE6 batteries without having to change the plates, and you can hot swap those batteries, meaning that you can take one out to change it, with the other one still giving power to the monitor. It also has a DC in, and this does come with a locking DC power plug, so you can plug this into an outlet if you're indoors somewhere for continuous power. It has both HDMI and SDI inputs and outputs. There are quarter 20 mounting threads on the bottom, top, and lower back of this monitor, none on the sides, and this is not a touchscreen monitor, which for me personally I prefer. There are less accidental touches of the screen when you're adjusting the monitor. There is a row of function buttons on the left side of the screen, which we'll talk about in just a moment, as well as a small joystick, and these function buttons do light up so you can see them easily if you're in a dark environment. The buttons themselves do feel good. They have a rubbery texture but a solid click when you push them, and the joystick is small so you don't accidentally push it, but it works well. Again, we're going to go into the menu system in depth in the second part of this video, but there are multiple pages here that you can customize with up to 8 assist features on each page. So this top button will turn on and off your look. The second button will turn on and off your histogram, waveform, vectorscope, and scale, and these all work together if you have them all set up in your list. The third button will turn on and off peaking, not focus assist, but peaking. And the fourth button will adjust your brightness from 0, 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100. The fifth button down here is to back out from a menu option, for example, the brightness. And then you have the joystick here. So why do I love this monitor? Well, of course, it's obviously priced very well. When you compare it to the competition with similar or sometimes even less features, this is priced better than pretty much everything else that's out there. Again, that's comparable in terms of what it has to offer. There are a huge amount of very customizable assist features built into this monitor, a lot of them that you might not see on especially cheaper monitors, but even some that are of comparable price, and a lot of those are very useful. So I love how much they really packed into here in terms of assist features. It's really bright, which of course is great for using it outdoors, and I have been using it outdoors a lot and it's been fantastic. The image itself is also really great. The colors, the contrast, the sharpness, everything looks fantastic on here, and the build quality is also really great. It definitely lets you feel like it can take a little bit of a beating when you're out on location. You don't have to worry about it. And it also has multiple power options, which gives you a lot of versatility. You have 2 types of batteries and a DC in, which I love. On top of that, it has both HDMI and SDI in and out, and really there's just not a whole lot that's left out here. For the price, it's really got everything you could possibly need in a 7-inch bright on-camera monitor. I mean, there's nothing left out here. That's all there is to it. So just to be fair, I do want to mention a couple of minor complaints, but I do want to stress that they are minor. My first one would just be that I wish in the menu you could scroll up and have it loop around back to the bottom of the menu just to be able to reach those bottom items a little bit quicker. It's a very small thing, but it would be nice to have. As of now, when you adjust the brightness, the window that pops up does not automatically close, so you have to push the back button to close out of that little pop-up window. I think it would be cool if you could have it just automatically close after a few seconds. I don't think it's the kind of thing that you really need to have stay open, so I don't see why it wouldn't just automatically close after a few seconds to avoid having to press multiple buttons. It's a super lazy complaint, but if, again, I have to complain about something, that would be one of those things. One of the, I guess, larger minor complaints would be that I would love to have a little bit more customization of these function buttons on the left side of the monitor. If you're not using one of those functions that it's designed to access, for example, the top button will access your look function, but if you're not using that, the top button is then useless. So I think it's just a kind of missed opportunity for them to give a little bit more functionality to these function buttons. The last point I want to bring up is something that I don't personally care about, and it hasn't caused me any problems at all in multiple methods of mounting this monitor, but I have seen other people complain about this on other monitors before, so I wanted to mention it, is that the inputs and outputs are on the bottom of this monitor, and also the inputs in particular are close to that center mounting point. So if you have kind of a larger EVF monitor mount, that might possibly block those inputs. And also, if you have not a lot of clearance between your camera and the monitor, you might have a little bit of difficulty with larger cables getting in there. You might need a little bit more clearance, some kind of EVF mount that's a little bit taller. Again, it hasn't caused me any problems in the ways that I've been using it at all, but it's something that I wanted to mention because you might need to think about it depending on how you mount your monitors. So, as I mentioned, one of the huge pros of this monitor is the huge number of highly customizable assist features that it has built into here. So let's go through the menu one by one and I will explain to you everything that is built into this. To access what they call the My Set, which is just a set of features you're able to quickly turn on and off, you just press this joystick and then you use it to navigate the menu. If you press left on the joystick, it will exit back out of that. And if you select something in the menu and then push the joystick, it will turn it on and off. If you press right, it will jump into the submenu of settings for that particular feature. And then you can use left and right to adjust the settings inside that menu. Pressing this back arrow will back out of that. And you can either push that again to back out of this menu or left once more on the joystick. When you're not in any menu, pressing left and right on the joystick will scroll through the different pages of My Sets. So you can have multiple pages here for different cameras or different situations, and you don't have to dive in and customize the My Set each time. If you scroll all the way to the left before page 1, it'll bring you to the general monitor settings, which we'll get into a little bit later in the video. But for now, let's go through all of the different assist features that this has built into it. To show you these features, I'm going to build a new My Set. So when you're in this new My Set page, which you get to just by scrolling past your last My Set, just push the joystick and it will add a new My Set. In this case, it's page 7 for me. And you push the joystick once more, you'll see that there's nothing loaded in this My Set yet. So you have the option to add a new tool, push the joystick here, and you will have this list of all of these different assist features that you can choose from. So first up is aspect, and if you go into the submenu for that, you can enable it, and then you scroll through a few different ratios, and you also have the custom option where you can set the width and the height by percentage. You also have the ability to change the style from matte to simple lines. With this and all of the different assist functions, if you want to delete them from your My Set, just scroll down to the bottom to the trash can, press it and confirm, and then it is gone. Next up is your safe areas, and if you go into the submenu here, you can enable it, and then you can choose from a few different formats to fit to whatever format you're going to be recording in. And then you can set the action safe areas to on, as well as the title safe areas to on individually. Go ahead and delete that and move on to the next tool, which is your Crosshair. Again, enable that, and you can choose from a hollow style, which I don't know if you can see in the center here. The lines don't connect, so you have a little space there, or connected, cross as they call it. So even for a simple crosshair, you do have some level of customizability. Next up is Crosshatch, which will give you different regions. You can go anywhere from 2 all the way up to 9, and you can see those lines on screen, so you can use them as guides however you see fit. So next up, we're getting into our expose section. So we're going to start off with exposure assist, which is basically your false color. And if you've never used false color before, I'm going to turn on the IRE scale here just to explain it a little better. You can see that the pure blacks in your image are going to show up as purple, and the pure whites will show up as red. And in between that, every 10 IRE has a certain color assigned to it. So you can see quickly this yellow area is probably around 90, 80, 70 IRE. Below that, everything that's white is about 60, gray is 50. So you can see this box here is about 50. It's just very quick to see pinpoint areas on your image, what their exposure is. So you can see exposure on skin or exposure, on your subject as opposed to the background very easily. And it's just a very useful assist feature to have. And you do have this IRE scale built in here, so you can read it even if you've never used it before. You can adjust that to be on the left or the right. What's really cool is they have a couple of custom false color modes built in here. They're called RE and red. And you can see right on the scale here, the difference between the standard false color is that they only have, pure white and just below that, pure black just above that. And then they have probably around 50 here and around maybe 30. So these are certain exposure values which are important for, RE users or red users, but they can also just be generally really useful to get the clutter of colors off your screen and really quickly pinpoint values that could be useful for a lot of users. For the Canon C200, for example, I often expose middle gray or skin tones right around 50, so this would be really easy to expose without having to hunt for those colors and look through the more complex scale on the side here. So it's cool that they do have a couple of different modes of false color built in here. It's already a useful assist feature, but they made it even more useful. Next up is zebras, and this is pretty straightforward. You can enable it, and then you can set the level that it comes on at. So now it's at 50. So again, we talked about this is about 50 right now. We saw that in false color mode. So you can see the zebras here showing that it's at about 50 IRE. This will expose everything over 50 IRE in this zebra pattern. What I would like to see here added would be if you could have zebras between a certain IRE range, for example, between 50 and 60, or between 60 and 70, for example. So you could really target certain areas with zebras just as easily as you could with false color. That's something that I saw in the C200 and it's very useful. I wish that it would be here. It's something maybe they could add in the future, but it's something I want to recommend they do add. But anyway, as far as zebras work, they're pretty standard here compared to other monitors. Next up is the histogram, which is just a histogram you can see here. But again, you do have the option to choose from Luma and RGB. And you can also choose the location. There's a number of different locations you can choose. And you can also choose the opacity. So if you want to have it a little bit opaque, so that way you can see the image behind it. You have 3 levels of opacity you can choose, which is really cool. Next up is the waveform. And if you've never used waveforms before, this is another really useful tool. I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit larger so I can explain it a little more. And let's close out from this menu just so you can see it. And this is going to read from left to right, and from bottom to top is your brightness. So the bottom of the scale is pure black, the top of the scale is pure white, and you can read it from left to right. So you can really see how it matches the image here with its white boxes in the middle. It kind of goes up a bit. And again, it's about 50 IRE, right where we talked about with the false color, with the zebras. So you can see kind of this area of your image is darker than this area. So it's a little bit more easy to read, I think, than just your histogram. Histogram just tells you the brightness overall, but it doesn't tell you where that brightness is. So for example, this is really bright here. So I can see that over here. But if I was looking at a histogram, I just see something is really bright, but I don't know exactly where it is. This is a pretty obvious case, but in some cases it might not be so obvious. So having this is very useful. You can really see that very clearly through the waveform, which is really cool. The waveform on here does also have some different customization. You can choose Luma, RGB, or RGB Parade, and this can be useful for setting white balance, for example. But it's just nice that they do have that option to switch that in here. Again, you can choose the size. There's a few different options, and the location, as well as the opacity, same as the histogram. So next up is our Vectorscope, and before we get into this, I just want to comment on the fact that Vectorscope and Waveform in general are things that you don't see on cheaper monitors. You just don't see them. And even on monitors that do have them, the same as exposure assist, the false color, you don't see the level of customization that you do here. You don't have the option to choose between Luma and RGB or RGB Parade, or you don't have the different modes of false color that you do here. So the things that other monitors do have, this has more customization, but still a lot of those cheaper monitors don't have these at all. So it's really great to have this much in terms of exposure assist features. Really great what they have built into here. So let's just take a look at the Vectorscope here. And this is just going to tell you where the colors in your image are laid out. I have, a lot of orange and yellow kind of in this image right now. So you can see a lot of that is going in that direction. This line right here will generally tell you where your skin tones will be, or at least close to where your skin tones will be. So this can really help in certain situations. Again, you can go ahead and choose the location for it, as well as the opacity, the same as we talked about before. Next up is our focus assist features, and the first one is called focus assist. And this is pretty much what people would call peaking in most situations. In most cameras, this is what focus peaking looks like. And it basically just highlights the sharp areas of your image in a certain color. Right now, the standard is white. You can also choose blue, green, and red. And you can also adjust the sensitivity. So the more sensitive it is, the more strong that color will be, but it might not be as easy to get really accurate reading of it. So the lower it is, you can see that it doesn't quite highlight so much, but it's going to be more accurate, of course. So usually somewhere in the middle is a nice place to start. What I really like is they have the option to turn a black and white background on and off. And this is again something that I have in the C200 that I absolutely love. And again, even in monitors with focus assist or with peaking, you very rarely see this option. And what it is, as you can see on the screen now, it turns everything into black and white, which makes it much easier to see that color. So sometimes the color can get lost in your image. This makes it a lot easier to see that. So if you're not concerned so much about the color, you just really want to see what's in focus, this is going to make that a lot easier. So I really like having this option built into here. Again, even on monitors that do have focus peaking, this is an option that's not typically there. So I really like, again, the level of customization that you have within each of these assist features. After that, we have what they call peaking. And again, this is a little bit different from what most people will see when they see peaking on other cameras. And I'm just going to close this out so you can see it a little more accurately. And basically, this just sharpens up your image like intensely. Again, you can choose the intensity in that custom settings menu, but it just makes it, without adding any color to your image, it makes it really easy to see what's in focus by just making it very, very sharp. So this is actually a really nice assist feature. So it doesn't really get in the way. It doesn't obstruct your image with weird colors, but it just makes it really, really sharp and very easy. It kind of highlights the edges a little bit just because of that added sharpness, but it makes it very easy to see what's in focus there. And again, as I up the intensity, you can really see the effect here. Let me back out of that again and show you as I adjust focus here. So it's really, really clear to see what's in focus there. And it's a good assist feature to have. And again, it's something that actually I haven't really seen in a lot of other monitors. Typically, they just have the color version of focus peaking, but this is really nice too. Again, it doesn't get in the way. It doesn't clutter your image as much as that color might. So next up is our look, and this is basically your LUTs. And so if you turn this on, you can choose from a look file or a LUT file. They do have some internal here that are built into the monitor for a variety of cameras: Alexa, Blackmagic, Canon, Panasonic, Red, Sony. So if you just want a standard LUT, then this will work for you. But if you want to load your own, you can go ahead and choose from the SD card, which will load right into the side here. And I've loaded a few LUTs in here. I'm going to go ahead and choose this one right here for Canon Log. This is one that I often use when I record in Canon Log. And if I turn it on and off here, you can see the change there. So this is with the LUT on. I'll show you here. You can see it's green when it's activated. So you can see off, on, off, on. So if you want to, load your really super stylistic LUTs in here, let me go and choose one that's maybe a little bit more noticeable. Let me choose that. Okay, and this might not necessarily look good because it's not made for standard C-Log, but you can see here there's quite a big difference there. But if you have your own custom LUTs that you want to load in here to kind of get a good idea of what your final image is going to look like, you can do that just simply with your SD card. Just pop it in there and you'll be able to access it right through here. So that's really cool and very simple to use. If we keep scrolling down, you have your audio meters, and if you turn this on, you can see the audio meters pop up at the bottom here. The meters and also the bars that go up are colored, so you can see very easily on screen here. They're a little bit small and you can't adjust the size, but it is very easy to see because it's bright and it is colored. So that's a nice audio meter if you don't have one already on whatever camera you're using. You can choose the location between the bottom left and the bottom right, and once again the opacity between a couple different levels. If you're using these, you're probably going to want to keep it on 0 though, so you can easily see them. And that's all there is to that. Scrolling down past our audio meters, you have SDI Metadata, and I'm not using an SDI cable right now. I'm using HDMI, so we're just going to skip over that. But I'll show you what's in there actually. It'll allow you to show your time code and record information, the metadata right on the screen. So if you're using an SDI, that might be something you want to display. So scrolling down past all that, we have our final thing here, which is image scale. And that will allow you to scale your image. You can choose the % here as well as the location from a few different options here. And the reason you might want to do that, I'm going to go into one of my other my sets here to show you an example. I have now set to the second button the histogram, the vectorscope, the waveform, and that scale function. So if I push this button, they will all activate at the same time. And you can very quickly see all of your exposure assist tools here without them covering your image. So you can get your exposure and everything using these tools, very easy to see. And then when you're ready to record, press the button and you're back to full screen. So it's a really cool way to have all of that integrated into one quick and easy button. And I really, really like the way that all works together. So let's go back to our overall monitor settings menu. And the first one is input. This is just going to let you choose between SDI and HDMI. Sorry for that. So depending on what you have plugged into here, you can choose that through here. Output is the same way. You can turn your SDI and HDMI output on or off. Next one is your volume. For your headphone volume, you can adjust that from 0 to 100, which is really cool to have that option. Your backlight, again, you can adjust your brightness here from this button, and it goes in 20% intervals from 0, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. But if you choose this option, you can go in 1% intervals. So if you want a little bit more fine control, you can do that right here. After that, we have our option to rotate your image, and this will just flip it upside down basically. So if you're using the mount on the top and you have the screen upside down, then you can use this. It's nice to have that here, but it's only those two options. You don't have the option to simply flip the image left and right, which could be sometimes useful if you're standing in front of the camera. You know, that movement sometimes is the opposite of what you'd expect. So it would be nice to have that here, but at least you do have the option to rotate it if you have the screen upside down. Next up, you have your anamorphic de-squeezing options, which is for 1.33, 1.5, 1.66, 2 times, and 2 times magnified, as well as, of course, 1 times, which is basically just off. Next up, we have your output look, and this is just to turn your output look on or off. And that's, of course, if you're using a LUT in the monitor, choosing whether or not you want to have that sent out through your SDI or HDMI. Depending on what you're going into, you might want to turn that on, you might want to turn that off. You can do that here. And then you have your DSLR scale, and this will give you a couple of options for Canon 5D Mark II and Canon 7D, which may send out a signal in a different size, and you need to scale it to fit on this screen appropriately. You can do that right there. The next section will let you turn the status displays on or off. You can see on the top of the screen here, you can turn them on or off. That's pretty straightforward. And then you can save or load profiles to an SD card. You got your screen calibration settings right there, and you can see everything on screen that you can calibrate. You got your language settings, and at the moment you have Chinese and English options. You got your Wi-Fi settings, you can see your firmware information as well as your serial number. And last but not least is your factory reset. So that's about it. And if you haven't made up your mind by now, I would highly recommend this monitor to anybody who's looking for a 7-inch monitor, who needs something that's very bright, who wants more assist features, and who wants something that's priced better than a lot of the competition is. It's built well, the image looks great, it has SDI and HDMI inputs, multiple power options. There's really not a lot to complain about here. But if you do have any questions or comments, let me know down below and I will do my best to get back to you. If you like this video or found it helpful, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe to see more in the future, and as always, thank you for watching.